Your knowledge of contract language is imperative.
You must know what a violation looks like if you wish to be active in its cessation.
It is important to understand that being active and knowledgeable affects your overall bargaining strength.
Together, we can forge a more militant NALC.
Good morning and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, that podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Today, we're going to have an interesting one. We are going to talk about a historical piece about something that used to exist a long time ago, and I think it's important to document it because many of the people who were involved are on their way out of life pretty much, because this was something that was big in the 80s and 90s. A lot of these guys, they're retired by now, and there's not a lot left that can tell their story about how this program that the Postal Service used to have, how it differed from what we currently stand. And it's important to document historical things. You know, that sets the foundation for where you came from. So today, we will be talking about the employee involvement committees and what spawned out of the employee involvement committees, the work teams pilot program. And Roseville, fortunately for me, was part of this pilot program, so I had access to retirees to interview. So basically, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to explain this program. I'm going to read a postal record from 1985 that talks about the employee involvement committees. And then I'm going to have 3 gentlemen on for interviews about how it was like being part of these programs so that other people can understand. I might end it on some notes, but other than that, that'll be pretty much what this is going to be about. And essentially, I'm trying to put on record what this thing was, just in case anyone else in the future might want to revive something like this. They can understand the pros and cons. But first, I'm going to kind of give you a short synopsis. From my understanding, it could be flawed, but I'm going to do the best I can from what I've learned from other people. From what I understand, there was something called employee involvement committees. And this existed from the 80s and 90s. I think it ended in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, they allowed committees to provide management input for what the employees wanted. I think that's a grand idea, to be honest. And they would revolve these committees, revolve who's in them, to get different opinions, once a year or something of that nature. And during this process, they had a grand idea. They said, you know what? Who needs managers? Let's do a program where we manage ourselves. So they developed what was called work teams. And from my understanding, you had the option of volunteering to be part of a work team, but you had to volunteer as a string. And they would give you 2 PTFs, if I'm not mistaken. And that string met every morning and determined their volume and this and that. They did all management's job, and they got their job done. They used the 2 PTFs, and basically, they didn't need management. I've heard a lot of whispers about how this program worked out, but from what I understand, the controversial part no one's probably going to say is that it was under our understanding that people from management didn't like it because it pushed supervisors away. People from the union didn't like it because it made us look like we weren't needed either. So at the end of the day, both parties agreed this wasn't for them. There's pros and cons to this program, and there's 2 sides to the story. Today, we will mostly be covering the positives. We're going to be talking to 3 individuals who were part of these work teams. And, of course, if you were voluntarily part of the work team, of course you're going to like it. But who knows? Maybe they have some bad things to say as well. So we'll see. Only time will tell. You'll get to know at the end. But for now, we're going to go more into this employee involvement committee. Luckily for me, I have historical documents over at Roseville. So, with that being said, I found a postal record from 1985. It reads almost like a manual for this thing. So, I'm just going to read you guys the thoughts on what this process is, the employee involvement committee, and you determine whether or not you think this sounds useful. Alright, so let's start from the top. Employee involvement. Cooperation, input, enhance quality of work life. For 200 years, the Postal Service has operated in much the same way. Management from the top down. The people who moved the mail had practically no say in the hows and whys of the work procedures. All that is changing. In June of 1982, the National Association of Letter Carriers and the United States Postal Service began exploring new approaches in labor management relations that would improve employee job satisfaction and efficiency. The result? EI, the Joint NALC-USPS Employee Involvement Process. Through EI, letter carriers are becoming part of the decision-making process, improving their sense of self-worth, their relations with their supervisors, and service to the public. And it's working. At many of those work locations where EI is already in place, letter carriers are seeing a fundamental change in the attitude and philosophy of management. Supervisors are adapting once inflexible work procedures to suit the needs of those who actually do the job. Does that sound like it should be happening today? Maybe. Employees are addressing a host of problems, large and small, with the full support and assistance of their supervisors. Take control. For letter carriers, EI means more control over their work lives. Able to improve their working conditions, letter carriers feel better about themselves, about their jobs, and about the Postal Service. The Postal Service gains, too. As managers, supervisors, and employees develop trust, the number of grievances drop and absenteeism and work errors decrease. Productivity increases as employees implement ways to work more efficiently. Customer service improves. EI is making a difference, declared NALC President Vice Sombrato. Although there have been some problems and strained relations for the most part, letter carriers and their supervisors are communicating, analyzing problems in a more cooperative and effective way. We're pleased and delighted with the progress EI has made thus far and look forward to the continued improvement in union management relations, he said. Employee involvement has now been introduced in all but 20 of the 220 managemental sectional centers, MSCs, in the country, and should be in all of them by the end of the year. More than 1,000 groups of workers and their supervisors, known as work teams, have been trained and are now meeting regularly. Although some work teams face problems with managers unwilling to cooperate, the overwhelming majority report positive experiences. Work teams are successfully tackling a host of job-related issues, everything from what kind of music to play at the station to earlier starting times, methods to reduce missed throws and missed deliveries, and hold mail procedures. EI was set in motion 3 years ago with the formation of the National Joint Employee Involvement Committee, composed of 4 representatives from NALC, Vice President Frank Connors, Assistant Secretary Treasurer Helene Overby, Executive Assistant to the President John Miller, and Assistant to the President David Noble, and 4 from the USPS headquarters. They developed the goals and principles of union management cooperation in the Postal Service and set up a regional and local structure to implement the process. In each of 5 Postal Service regions, a regional steering committee consisting of USPS managers and NALC business agents is responsible for diffusing EI throughout their MSC. Each MSC has a local joint steering committee that selects the stations to receive EI and oversees the process. The committee is comprised of 5 NALC branch representatives and 5 Postal Service managers, the MSC manager, MSC directors for customer service, employee and labor relations, and mail processing, and the manager of delivery and collection. Working together within each MSC is a pair of labor management facilitators, one appointed by the NALC and one by MSC manager. Facilitators train the employees and supervisors on the work teams in such skills as communication and problem solving. They provide guidance and support to the work teams, helping them progress toward their goals and work out obstacles that arise. Work teams of 8 to 12 carriers and supervisors meet regularly on company time to analyze and solve workplace problems. Work teams consist of 1 or 2 NALC stewards and 1 or 2 managers, with the remaining slots filled by letter carriers from a pool of volunteers. Work team members are rotated regularly so that all interested carriers have the opportunity to to participate. Responsive. The task facing work team members is to identify and prioritize problems and attempt to find solutions. When they reach total consensus on how to remedy a particular workplace problem, they present their request for change to the manager having authority in that area. That manager must either implement that suggestion in whole or in part, or give a full explanation for rejecting it. The proper test of EI's success is not whether or not most work team recommendations are adopted, but whether management is being responsive to and considerate of the needs of its employees. Stressed NALC Vice President Frank Connors. Cooperation, communication, and flexibility are keys to making EI work. So far, we've seen real commitment on the part of the Postal Service to alter the traditional authoritarian style of management into one where letter carriers truly participate in decisions that affect them. EI is part of an important new development in American labor management relations that improves the quality of work life by enhancing cooperation between employees and managers and by recognizing the value of employee input. Admittedly, some anti-union companies are using so-called quality of work-life programs to undercut or avoid unions by giving employees a management-controlled substitute for collective action. But when unions participate equally with management at every level of planning and developing quality of work-life programs, as is the case with NALC USPS EI process, the results benefit the company and employees and their union equally. EI develops and strengthens lines of communication between labor and management and gives NALC a greater presence with the Postal Service than we've ever had in the past. He points to the successful programs that the UAW have developed with General Motors and Ford that give auto workers input not only in their working conditions, but in corporate strategy and product development. Other major unions, including the steelworkers and communication workers, also have quality of life programs in place. The AFL-CIO has endorsed joint union management programs such as these that afford greater worker participation in the decision-making process at the workplace. The Labor Federation's Committee on the Evolution of Work sees such efforts as a way to revive unions and strengthen them in the workplace. Enhanced cooperation developed through joint union management programs can carry over into improved collective bargaining relationships, President Semprado noted. EI means more individual freedom on the job. It's an extension of the workplace democracy, and democracy in the workplace is what a union is all about. Now it goes into some examples. Making our voices heard. Essex carriers use EI to tackle workplace problems. Everyone's interested. That's what EI must stand for in Essex, Maryland, a small community in eastern Baltimore County. Employee involvement was introduced into the Essex Post Office in March of this year, and the enthusiasm's incredible. You can see it in the energy with which letter carriers move the mail. You can hear it as they describe with pride improvements they have already made in the job. You can feel it in the more relaxed atmosphere on the workroom floor. Extra input is the key to EI's success. Through the EI process, letter carriers, the people who do the job, are encouraged to suggest ways to do the job better. And managers are encouraged to be flexible and responsible. Working together, the result is better morale, increased efficiency, and improved customer service. EI's procedure for change is based on the work team, an all-volunteer committee of letter carriers and supervisors who meet regularly on the clock to tackle job-related problems. Carriers on the work team solicit the opinions of their coworkers. Then at each meeting, they join their supervisor in brainstorming solutions, hammering out a course of action agreeable to everybody. At Essex, NALC Branch 176 shop steward Carol Zepp and members Paul Clark, Ed Powell, Ken Clark, and Bob Rucker meet with delivery supervisor Vernon Pop for an hour on Friday morning in the station lunchroom, discussing ways to make the Essex station a better place to work. To keep ideas fresh and flowing, work team members are rotated annually from the names of interested NALC members drawn at random. Depending on the size of the station, up to a dozen people can be on a work team, including 1 or 2 stewards and 1 or 2 supervisors. The entire team receives 16 hours of training in communication and group dynamics from 2 facilitators, one each from NALC and USPS, who get the work team rolling. We teach communication. That's something not covered in school, remarked Joseph Portera, NALC's facilitator for Baltimore MSC. Better communication means employees get better understanding of what the Postal Service is doing, and managers actually listen to what their employees have to offer. That leads to better working conditions and more flexibility in the job. Popping off. Problem. Color-coded labels on the sorting cases kept shifting position, even popping off entirely. With codes out of place, substitutes would deliver mail to houses that should be on hold and mistakenly hold mail of their neighbors, creating customer dissatisfaction. Process. The Essex work team discussed several possible solutions. They decided to mark color warnings directly on plastic strips that covered the entire row of addresses. They tried it out on one case for a week and it worked. Solution. Outfit every case with plastic strips and grease pencils, which can mark a color code and be wiped off when no longer applicable. Supervisor Vernon Pop approved the idea and cut the plastic himself. It felt so good to get rid of those colored tabs. You accidentally hit one with a piece of mail and it would pop off and go flying over your shoulder, laughed carrier Ken Clark. What really made us feel good is that someone listened to us. Here we are doing the work and knowing there had to be a better way, added carrier Ed Powell. Within the space of 3 weeks, we had our label idea in place. EI works here. Problem. Address labels on circulars from a particular advertiser kept coming in upside down, making them difficult to read. Process. The work team decided to ask the Postal Service's customer service representative to contact the advertiser. Solution. The customer changed his procedure to put labels on right side up. For 6 months we complained about those labels and nothing happened, noted shop steward Carol Zepp. When we got results through EI, one of our skeptics announced, "I'm a believer." Another believer is a Supervisor Pop. EI has given letter carriers a voice, a feeling they can be heard, he observed. It's a change of attitude from the top right on down. It gives us some flexibility about what we can do at the station. The word flexibility comes up often when the work team discusses EI. Tied to hard and fast work rules for so long, postal employees are welcoming the ability to alter procedures to improve productivity. For instance, hold mail cards, once required to be tucked away, can now sit right on the case for easy reference. Leaving the hold notice with the patron's held mail is another efficiency suggested by employees to better serve the public. Problem. Letter carriers buy stamps for patrons as extra courtesy, but to purchase the stamps they must either interrupt the window clerk, antagonizing the clerk and customers in line, or stand in line themselves. Process. The work team reasoned that stamps could be purchased from clerks who do the accountable mail. They suggested either a strong box for stamps on the portable accountables case, or keeping the accountables up front in a clerk's stamp station. Solution. The station manager approved the first idea with the alteration. Instead of a strong box, a stamp drawer would be attached to the portable accountables case. A clerk handy with tools added a shelf to the case to accommodate the drawer. Building trust. Cooperation and communication are what make EI a success, noted Jerry Kerner, president of Baltimore Branch 176, which represents the Essex carriers. The Essex station has had EI less than 6 months, and already they've accomplished a lot because employees and managers are willing to work with each other and listen to each other. Each success builds on the last. As both sides see how much they have accomplished under EI, they develop a sense of trust that enhances communication even more. EI helps management and craft both ways, Supervisor Pop pointed out. Employees have a better attitude because we're listening and acting on what they say. In return, they're more willing to accept change when the Postal Service feels it's necessary. Any change is generally met with resistance, Carrier Ed Powell acknowledged. But with EI, now we're told what and why, not just do it. Morale has improved tremendously. Sick leave is down a lot over the same period last year. Carriers are putting forth the extra effort. I think EI has a lot to do with it. Solicit input. Although only 5 NALC members are on the Essex work team, they encourage every employee, letter carrier and clerk alike, to offer suggestions on improving their work environment and service to the public. They review possible changes and work procedures with every employee affected, and proceed only if everyone is in full agreement. The work team members then review each meeting with their coworkers. Extra input, ends in flexibility, both are a significant part of what EI stands for. In Essex and in stations across the country where employee involvement is working. And then next it goes over a joint statement from Sombrado and Postmaster Paul N. Carlin. And this ends the postal record, but this is from March 1, 1985. Joint statement of reaffirmation of support for the letter carrier craft and the U.S. Postal Service employee involvement process. More than 2.5 years ago, the National Association of Letter Carriers and the U.S. Postal Service began meeting regularly in an effort to improve the quality of working life for letter carriers and their supervisors. These meetings resulted in a shared commitment on the part of the NALC and the Postal Service to develop a process which would support this purpose. Over time, these meetings also resulted in the goals and structure of what it is today called the Joint NALC-USPS Employee Involvement Process. Employee Involvement, or EI for short, has come a long way since those initial meetings in the summer of 1982. EI has now permeated almost half of the 220 management sectional centers and independent post offices which exist throughout the country. Perhaps as many as 1,000 groups of workers and their supervisors, commonly known as work teams, have been established and are now meeting regularly. Literally thousands of letter carriers, supervisors, and local and regional postmasters and union officers have received EI training and now are actively engaged in the process. Now that we are 2.5 years into EI, and with the Postal Service having just undergone major managerial changes at the top of the organization, it is fitting to reaffirm the commitment of both the Postal Service and the National Association of Letter Carriers to both principles of employee involvement and the actual process that the NALC and the Postal Service together have created. EI is making a difference, and we believe that EI reaches the workroom floor and more stations throughout the country. It will make an even greater difference. Letter carriers and their supervisors are communicating more effectively with one another, are working jointly to improve their relationships, and are beginning to analyze problems in a more systematic manner. The Postal Service is becoming a better place to work, and the Postal Service is also becoming an even better Postal Service. But as pleased as we are with what occurred so far, we both realize that there is much to do. Large numbers of postal offices and stations, and large numbers of carriers and their supervisors remain untouched by the process. The relationship between the NALC and the Postal Service at many levels of the Postal Service is far less open and trusting than it should be, and than it must become. Together, the NALC and the Postal Service have a long way to go in developing a way for carriers and their supervisors to work together with one another and not against one another. But we still have a long way to go before the quality of working life within the Postal Service is what it should be and what it can be. Together, we are committed to completing the journey. Well, apparently that journey has been already completed for a very long time, but I'm glad I'm here documenting it, and maybe it can serve a purpose in the future. I think it sounds like a grand idea. You know, it's something that we can benefit from even today, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe not as it was back then exactly in the same in structure, but come on. Who benefits when management actually listens to the employee? I think everyone benefits. And I think this is a good thing to mention at a pivotal time where contract negotiations are right around the corner. Maybe we should get a new committee of stuff that's kind of like employee involvement. And I think this looks like something somebody can use as a template to make their own process in the future. Now, like I said before, this is going to be a long one because I got a few interviews, but just to give people an idea of how it was like, I'm going to put people on record that have been through this process. One gentleman, Matt Gruner, he does reference a safety committee, but he later on told me he meant to say employee involvement committee, just to let you know, just to get the facts straight. But without further ado, I'm going to come out on the other side. Next up is the 3 interviews. See you on the other side.
Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Thomas M. Gruner. I worked at the Roseville Post Office for, I transferred there in 1976 from Warren, and I stayed there until I retired March 31st of 2011.
All right. Now, as I understand it, you were part of a work team pilot program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Awesome. So we're here to see what do you think was the difference between working in the work program and being off of the work program? What do you think this thing was all about?
Well, they did it for a couple of years, and I don't know if they were trying to get away with using less supervisors or supervision, but we rather liked it. We had to do the paperwork that the supervisors did at the time, where they would compare our figures with the same period last year. It was called SPLY. And there was a thing back then, they called it a DECA, DECA. But we did all the paperwork as a team. There was like a whole section of us. I don't really remember how many routes. I think it was more than one swing. May have been 2 swings. So that would have been like 10 routes, I would imagine. But we all kind of liked it.
Okay.
Then after about 2.5 years, I think management just got tired of it and shut it down.
Okay. So in these teams, I understand that you guys had made your own decisions. Can you run down what that was like?
Oh, well, decisions as far as we counted our own mail, and it was all, we all recorded it and everything. And as far as decisions go, I suppose if we passed out help from the PTFs, we had PTFs that would come in, and we could use whatever to absorb some of our overtime, I guess, if we needed help. It was just a real pleasure. We didn't have to listen to a supervisor. I guess we even had our own safety talks. It was just like a self-run unit, and most of us enjoyed it.
Do you think that the unit ran better? Was it more efficient?
I can't say that it was any more efficient, but it was comparable.
No.
I mean, our numbers, they kept track of the numbers for over 2 years. So
Okay.
we were holding our own with any management unit in there. In fact, year over year, we actually bettered ourselves.
Nice. How was the morale?
Higher. Everybody was more enthused. Um,
Okay. Now, one other thing. Do you have anything else that you think you would like to add that, considering the listeners might be interested in understanding this program, is there anything uh, that you think you would like to tell anybody about?
well, there was another committee at the time. It was called the Safety Committee, I believe. So this all sprang from us having a safety committee at the Roseville Post Office at the time. And that was, we had clerks on the safety committee, we had carriers on the safety committee, and we had managers on the safety committee. And the people would rotate. It wouldn't always be the same people, but you were generally in there for a year, and then after that, they would change out with somebody else. But I think the safety committee accomplished a lot, and I believe our safety record, as far as the work team went, it was very similar to the office. I don't think that there were any more injuries or whatever during that period of time. But yeah, it was just run differently. Management was attempting to be probably more cooperative with, with craft employees, should I say? And yeah, it was just it was a wonderful time. I was glad I got an opportunity to be in it.
Now, before I let you go, why do you suppose that they decided to discontinue it?
I really can't tell you. It certainly couldn't have been a budgetary issue, although maybe they would like to say that. I really couldn't say. Um, have you interviewed Jim Nelson yet?
Oh, I'll be doing that for sure.
All right. I am wondering if he would know what the ultimate um, reason was why, other than the fact that I think at the time Royal Oak was the center of our universe out here in Roseville before it went to Detroit and then came back to Royal Oak.
Right. We got the notorious Steve Futesh on the other line. So I'd like to first go ahead and introduce yourself, Steve.
Well, I'm retiree out of East Detroit, Michigan, now East Point. I was a letter carrier for 32 years. I've been the branch trustee, treasurer, vice president. I was chief steward in East Point. And years ago, we had a work team, and I was one of the 8 members of it.
Nice. That's exactly what we're interviewing you about. That was going to be my next question. So obviously you were part of this work team. Can you tell us what this was about? What was the whole idea to it?
The whole idea was to see if a small group could self-regulate themselves and make sure all the mail got out, minimum overtime, using the people we had as our resources, and we took care of scheduling everything we were doing. So vacations, sick time, annual leave, all that was all under our purview.
So this group of 8 individuals, you said, right? 8 individuals.
Yep.
They would approve each other's leave.
They would. Every morning we'd have a meeting at the start of the day for the 5 people that were on the 5 routes we had a swing. So whatever 5 of us were there on each individual day we'd meet in the morning, talk about how long each route was going to take, if we needed help or that. We had 2 PTFs at our disposal that, if we didn't need them, would be released back to the floor and would be worked outside of the work team, unless they were scheduled to cover for a sick leave or a vacation day or something like that. We also had the T-sets on the swing. So in the morning, we'd have our volumes. We'd talk about what we needed and assign either overtime or auxiliary assistance or nothing, and then we'd go out and do our job. And we did not have to report to management about that, so we were self-controlling.
That actually sounds pretty interesting. So my question is, how did it work? Did you guys think it was a good program?
Well, our numbers were good. For the time we did it, we were making standards. There wasn't any issue with that. Everybody on the team seemed happy with it. The PTS, maybe not so much sometimes if there wasn't enough work or something and they had to go do something that, they weren't, just like any PTF, that since you don't control what you do every day unless you're on a bid, Other than that, we try to make everybody happy.
Now,
It wasn't just about ourselves.
what time period did this go on from, approximately? I'm sure it's hard to remember exactly.
Yeah, I think we did it for about half a year.
Okay, do
And,
you recall the year?
That I do not. It was right. It was during the time we had a program called Employee Involvement. And we came up with the idea of doing the work team, and it got approved, so we did that, but exactly when that was, I don't remember, and I started looking for pictures and stuff to get a time frame, and I haven't found those yet. When I do, I might have a better idea.
Okay. Now, one last question. Why do you think they decided to stop the program?
Well, I think the supervisors were frustrated that we were doing the job. The pretense was that we were using too many resources and I'm sure we could have gotten by with one PTF or that, but they didn't want to adjust it at all. So after the trial, the 6 months, I think we did. They just said, "No, we're not doing this," and we went back to being supervised.
Okay. One last thing. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add, considering that the listeners might want to learn about this program? Is there anything that we might not have covered that you'd like to talk about?
Well, just the program came about because of a different program called Employee Involvement, and that was something where the workforce got a say in trying different ideas. And to me, that's a good thing. Anytime you can get input from the workforce and how to do things better, then you're going to have a better atmosphere in the office.
Okay, so it did produce a better atmosphere in general.
Well, for the work team it did. I don't know if everybody else appreciated it or not, because it was just, the 8 of us out of 30, well, we had 37 routes at the time, so there was about 52 people, I think, in the office. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Mr. Steve Futash, and hopefully I'll be posting this on Monday.
Okay. I'm glad I could help you out, and there's power in staying together.
All right, so now we're here with Jim Nelson. He was part of the work team program, and he's here to be interviewed. So, Jim Nelson, would you do me a favor? Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Jim Nelson. I was Chief Union Steward for the NALC in Roseville. And back in the day when I was here, we had a employee involvement. And it started in 1985, and it ran through to about 1989, I think. Anyways, part of the employee involvement was self-managed work team. So I was part of it, and I got my swing, which I had. There was 5 guys on it: Matt Gruner, Ron Jacobs, Roger Stry, Dave Pierce, and Eddie Pontiac. And that was my swing. I talked them all into going ahead and trying the program. And Woodstra was the postmaster, Gary Woodstra, and Jerry Lant was the SPO. And both of them said that they would give us 90 days to work out the problems, and at the end of 90 days they would they would make a decision on whether or not to keep the self-managed team. So I'm here with Josh right now, and he's going to ask me a few questions, I imagine.
So, on these work teams, how did you think that it worked out, and how was the day-to-day? Can you explain what you would do on a regular basis?
Yes. Anyways, when we first started out, like I said, there was a swing. We were in a unit. There was 3 units in the post office at the time, and there was 3 individual supervisors. And our goal is to eliminate one of the supervisors. That's what we had in mind. And at the time, we had a lot of people that weren't interested. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And fellow carriers that were saying, "Why are you doing this?" And I just kept on going because I was talking to the guys, and I said, "Look, we got nothing to lose. If at the end of 90 days, management decides not to do it, go ahead with it." I said, "At least we got to try it." So these guys were all the guinea pigs, but they were good employees. They were hard workers. All of them were hard workers. We had 2 PTFs that were assigned to ours, and it was a pretty good team. And every day we came in, we started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we had the PTFs. They would come in at around 9. And anyways, the production hours were the biggest things. Management wanted to make sure that we kept, so we had to keep track of our work hours, our volume, our days off, coverage, everything. And so it started off pretty good, and it was something worthwhile. I think it was, anyways.
All right, that's awesome. Well, let me ask you a question. I heard that you were called the pigs. Is that because you were guinea pigs? Is that why you guys were called the pigs?
Yeah, pretty much. We all had little pig noses that I bought, and we brought them in, and when people would say, "Yeah, you pigs, you're guinea pigs," and we'd all put our noses on. And anyways, we had a good time. Not only were we working hard, but it was enjoyable. One of the things that employee involvement really wanted to change in the whole thing was, at the time, they were using a lot of sick leave hours. We were shorthanded. We didn't have very many employees, like PTFs or casuals. It was mainly regulars that were doing all the work. So when they assigned 2 PTFs to the work team, a lot of people were upset because they weren't getting help. And so that was one of the things that we had to resolve, and we worked through it. But it was the biggest thing that I think was helped is that for 90 days, every one of these guys and ladies, it was Christine Mills was on part of it too. They stayed together, and not one person called in sick. So at the end of 90 days, our hours compared to the rest of the units, we had no sick days. So that in itself was amazing.
All right, I got 2 more questions. The next one would be, why do you think they stopped this program?
I can tell you real quick, Josh. Number one, the program was going so well. We had different St. Louis, Missouri came in, and they brought their people because they were doing the same thing. But they weren't even as close as we were. Everyone in the unit by that time, it started in '87. The self-managed unit. There was 30 good people that worked in the unit. But we made it past the 90 days, like I said, and then we took people that wanted to get in. And the biggest thing was we made it that you had to be a union member. That was solid. We said nobody could come in unless they were in the union. And at the time, Roseville had two non-union employees, okay? But the biggest thing is like I said, that we started getting invitations from people saying they wanted to be part of it. So then they opened it up, and so we got a lot of people that joined after the original 90 days. And within a year, we had a whole unit in there, so which was really good. But what was your question again? Okay. The reason why they stopped it was in '89, the post office, the headquarters, basically wanted to shut down employee involvement. Employee involvement started because of all the shootings in the post office during that time. They knew that they had a problem in the post office, okay? And they wanted to show that management and the union was getting together. So the headquarters in the union said, this is a good thing. But when self-management came around, I think what happened was that national headquarters of the NALC decided, wait a second, this is what they're doing now is they're eliminating the supervisor. So that's management. But on the other hand, they're eliminating the union. There won't be a need for a union anymore. There weren't any grievances. There was no manager disciplining people. So I think they thought that eventually the union would go away. So after I came back from vacation in July, the unit was gone back to being a supervised unit.
All right, now one more question. Is there anything else you'd like to add, just for historical context, just in case the listeners want to understand the most about this program as possible? Let us know anything else you'd like to add before we close you out.
Okay. Like I said, I was shocked about how quickly, once the employees got involved, we followed all the contractor rules, okay? We didn't violate any of the M41s, the NALC national agreement, okay? What we did is when we had overtime, okay, we followed the Article 8s, okay? So there was no violations. Up until that point, we were filing, I'd say, 150 grievances a year for less than, and there was 90 employees in this office. We're filing almost 2 grievances per employee, okay? There was no time off. People weren't getting time off because there was violations of overtime. We were filing, even, I'm sorry, being able to equalize. That's it. Oh, yeah. And they weren't equalizing. They were disciplining people. In fact, 2 employees had been fired prior to the self-managed unit because of their attendance. And we arbitrated those, and we lost, because, sick leave actually works for management, as long as they document it, and we're, being fair and disciplined to everybody equally. Anyways, it was sad because both of those employees had alcoholic problems, And I tried to get them to say and go to what did they do? Yeah, rehab, and they wouldn't do it. And anyways, the arbitration held that they had opportunity, they could have done things, and they fired them. So that was really sad.
Helping out with all that.
Yes, actually, the thing is, the PTFs were so happy because we, as a group, decided that we didn't need them on Saturday. All the employees would come in, so Saturday we gave them their day off. So they were happy. I mean, yeah, PTFs were like, "Oh, I want to be on that team," And not only that, but even in emergency cases, okay, we felt that if somebody came and was truthful, even, I have an emergency, the post office wouldn't let them off. They'd say, no, too bad. And we had employees walk out, say, you know what, it's an emergency. We'd have to file a grievance, and we'd go through the grievance procedure, and one of the keys, the pillars for the whole thing is we wanted to make it so that the employees felt responsible and come into work, okay? But at any time, we could get them the day off for any reason.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you, Jim Nelson, and I'm going to wrap this up. Hopefully you listeners have learned something valuable today. This is me coming out on the other side, and as always, have a good day.
Out to the Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now. The Grievance Genius and the Roseville Wrecking Ball doing amazing work.
Brothers and sisters, this guy is good, man. He's fucking good.
And my boy Joshua, he killed it. Man, he's lockstep right now. He's killing it.
You would think this guy has been around